Yeah, hi there. These comments are for NA, and I am Michael, the founder, owner, and the materials writer for all of your lessons at the online TOEFL course, the 7-step system to pass the TOEFL IBT. And you're also one of my students in the English language program here at California State University, San Bernardino. And you completed the very last integrated speaking practice test. And thank you for doing the homework on time, by the way. And let's listen to your response.
The lecture was about Titanic. The speaker said more ice warnings came in.
No, wait, it's not just about the Titanic. I think the lecture is focusing on the sinking of this great ship, or the events which were important in causing this ship to sink. So I think that your idea is you're not exactly capturing the purpose of the practice test.
And were directed to Captain Smith. About 9 o'clock, Captain Smith headed off to bed. Titanic was now traveling at 22.5 knots. The sea was still calm and the temperature had dropped to a chill 31 degrees. About 11 o'clock, Phillips received a word.
Now here's a question. Now, why do you think the speaker mentions the fact that the sea was calm and the temperature had dropped to a chilly 31 degrees? Think of it this way. If the sea's really calm and there's icebergs in the sea, as it says in the lecture, and I will quote, "With the Atlantic being so calm, icebergs would prove difficult to spot. Without the water breaking at the base, icebergs were virtually invisible." This is a major event here. So you left that out. You didn't mention that information. Now maybe you'll mention it when you get to the end, though. So let me keep going and listen to what you're saying.
From the Californian stating that the ship was blocked by ice. About 11:40, fleet became occupied by a hazy mass he saw in the near distance. First Officer William ordered the engines to be stopped.
Now there's something you didn't say here that I think is important. So let's go back to the hazy mass. So it says here, at about 11:40, fleet became occupied by a hazy mass he saw in the near distance. It says, he and Lee attempted to figure out what the haze was, but realized it was an iceberg when they were about to hit it. Now, why is this important? Before in the lecture it says, Fleet and Lee stood in the crow's nest acting as lookouts, and they left, according to the lecture, they left their binoculars at Southampton, you know, the binoculars like this, which means that they could not see in advance very much. So that's another important point that you need to really mention. So because they didn't have their binoculars, it would make it more difficult to spot icebergs in front of the ship. So that's an important event.
Reversed and then sent hard to port. The Titanic slowly moved to the port direction, but despite all efforts, the starboard side hit the iceberg, causing tiny trips in the Titanic steel. Titanic was dumped.
Now here's another question. What made it difficult for the ship to avoid the iceberg? Remember what you said earlier? The ship was traveling at 22.5 knots, so the ship was moving very quickly. That means when it saw the iceberg in front of it, it didn't have enough time to turn to get out of the way because the ship was going too fast. So I think that is an important idea. So in terms of your response, I don't think you really answered this question, I think, in the way it needed to be answered. So when you start off, in the beginning, you have to say something like, several events were important in causing this ship to sink. One important event was there was ice around the ship, the sea was very calm, and it means that because the sea was calm, it would be difficult to spot icebergs breaking at the base of these icebergs because the icebergs kind of blended right in with the water. Another problem is the ship was moving very quickly, 25.5 knots, even though it was given warnings about ice from the California. So the ship was a little reckless, going too fast. Another important point is they did not have their binoculars. They left them in Southampton. So the two workers who were in the crow's nest looking for icebergs in front of the ship, they didn't have the icebergs to see anything clearly. That seemed to be another important event. Right? So in terms of answering the question, I don't think that you really directly answered this question or covered the most important points that you needed to focus on. Okay, now let's talk about your score. So we have to go into the rubrics now. So I think here, for the most part, your delivery, I'd like to have you work on your intonation a little bit more. You can do that by going to pronunciation lessons 36 through 40. Your language, your vocabulary, and your grammar, it's a little bit basic. You're using very simple, very basic grammar and vocabulary. You have to do better than that, I think, if you want to prepare yourself for graduate study. Topic development, you simply left out some of the important points that I think were important in helping to answer the question. So that seemed to be a pretty big problem. So here, because of, I think the biggest difficulty here is what I call topic development issues. So your score here, I'm going to put you at about 2.0 out of 4, 15 points out of 30 on this practice test, or 70% on the assignment. All right, so there you go. Now you know the TOEFL IBT, you know what the 4 integrated speaking practice tests are like. You know which ones are harder. It's typically integrated speaking practice number 4 and number 6. The one you just did is also hard because it's considered academic. Anyway, thank you for doing the assignment, and I look forward to reading your integrated writing practice test at the end of the quarter.